Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of Questions on My Mind. And I've got the lovely Jeanne Andrus back with me today. We're still on the very important topic of menopause, but I want to look at it from a very different angle today. And that's because in my conversations with Jeanne and Pamela Windle and others, we've tended to focus on the physical and what women go through in terms of, you know, the hot flashes, the weight gain, the all of that sort of stuff, which is important to talk about. But there's another side to it, which is the mindset and emotional side of things. And it got me to thinking that this might actually be a bit of a danger zone for relationships, in terms of just the way the woman thinks is changing, what she's able to do is changing. And it seems like, and I could be wrong, I don't have loads of stats to back this up or anything, but that a lot of relationships tend to fail maybe around this time. So in preparation for this, I have read a brilliant book that Jeanne's written, which is for the men in the women's lives. And it's called Where is My Wife and What Have You Done With Her? And honestly, if you really want to help your spouse or your partner, I think it's an excellent book to read. It just breaks everything down for you. So, Jeanne, the Menopause Guru, welcome back.
Thank you so much for asking me to this conversation. This topic I'm super passionate about, and I love to talk about it because it is so important to us to understand what's going on in our relationships and make the choices that make sense for us.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with probably a bit of a controversial sort of question, which is, and maybe we'll delve into what the emotional and mental states are in a bit, but can this be so extreme that a woman could be irrational in her, say, rejection of her partner at this time?
Okay, I'm going to say that irrational is not necessarily the right word.
Okay.
I think that we can be highly judgmental. I think we can be quick to act on feelings that arise at this time, in that the emotions are much stronger and more intense. Is it, though, totally, quote, irrational to walk away from a partnership that is no longer serving us? Maybe we do it too quickly. And as I kind of explain in that book, there are many things that we can do to rekindle the relationship if both partners want to stay in it. But very often, the relationship that served us when we were raising our children, establishing our careers, making our place in the community, building our homes, all of that stuff may not be serving us in the same way. And so our reaction can be very fast and extreme. But is it necessarily irrational? I don't think so. I think that there usually is something underlying that relationship that says, this doesn't serve me anymore. And sometimes rather than giving the partner a chance to understand and fix it, we simply say, screw it, walk away. This actually, I got so mad at my partner the other night for not having the right table at the bar. That, yes, it was, it's a long story, but we were trying to find a place for us to sit at trivia. One person had one table, one person had another, and my husband was supposed to sort it out, and he didn't. And it just flipped me out. It was like, I cannot deal with this anymore. And I could feel the cortisol surging in my body. Now, that was a moment, and I almost left. I probably would have left had we had 2 cars with us. But it's that kind of anger that something just is no longer serving us. And sometimes my husband's just plain I don't know, his memory issues sometimes, and his failure to actually do what I've asked him to do, and he's agreed to do, can get on my nerves. And so is it totally irrational that one gets furious at one's husband for once more, for the 45,000th time in their relationship, coming home, taking off all his clothes, jumping in the shower, and leaving his clothes on the bathroom floor? Well, yeah, maybe a little bit irrational. Maybe it's a little bit a surprise to him that one would ask that he pick up the clothes and put them in the laundry hamper. But is it totally irrational? And I think it's that it's more extreme, if that makes sense.
So in that example about the clothes, and in our previous conversation, we actually talked about the socks on the floor and all of that as well. In that situation, could it be that the woman has not actually ever voiced her annoyance before?
Absolutely.
So she's just been picking them up with gritted teeth for however many years and putting it away. So instead of actually saying, can you do this? We haven't, but then just flip when it gets too much.
Exactly. And it could have been at the beginning of the relationship. Oh, this is sweet. I'll pick up his clothes and put them in the hamper. And you can see a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 24-year-old not having that problem. But years and years and years, and maybe you've asked, and maybe you haven't asked, but all of a sudden, the way your brain is working has changed. So you're really, first of all, you're much closer to anger and anxiety because your brain is no longer stopping cortisol from creating this anxiety or this anger reaction. And cortisol estrogen modulates cortisol. It makes the reaction less extreme. So now we've got this hormonal thing going on, and we start this whole thing allows us to be more in the center of our own lives. So we're caring more about how we feel and how we react and getting our needs met in a different way than we were getting our needs met 10 years, 15 years ago. So our reaction is based basically on this beginning to bring our own needs into the picture, less inhibition towards speaking our minds. And so the reaction is extreme, and it's not coming from a place of negotiation, which to me, the way to deal with this is to pre-negotiate this stuff, is to realize that these changes are happening, and to pre-negotiate this whole household thing, this whole I'm the one who has to think of what we're going to have for dinner tonight, and if I don't take something out of the freezer, it doesn't get done. Well, that's frustrating. That's annoying to me anyway. And so if I react in the moment, I'm going to get angry. But if I sit down with him on a Sunday morning and I say, let's think about what we're going to have for dinner this week. What do you want to do? When are we going out? What are we going to have? Who needs to take out what? Who needs to stop at the grocery store? All of that stuff can be pre-negotiated. And so can the actual thinking about it. That can all be pre-negotiated, but if it's not, our reaction tends to be way more emotional, way more over the top than it was before we were menopausal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm going to be kind to the men, because if we've never pre-negotiated any of this before, and all of a sudden we do want them to do more, it might be
Remember the
quite difficult.
title of my book? Where is my wife and what have you done with her? Because we changed the relationship and we didn't tell him.
Yeah.
And it's not fair, but it is biological. It's not fair, but it's also not irrational either. It's coming from this change in who we are. And unfortunately, truly unfortunately, evolutionarily, if you go back, and I think we may have talked about this, menopause comes from a very old time in which the life expectancy of a human was about 40. The men and women who lived past that age and became menopausal, and that was definitely an evolutionary advantage. And the men who managed to survive 50, 60 years of being a hunter and all the dangers that entailed, and women too were dealing with childbirth and all kinds of issues and illness and all that sort of stuff. The numbers that survived into these old age positions in the tribe were very small, and therefore likely not to be paired couples. And so the changes that men go through didn't really match the changes that women went through, and it probably wasn't an issue. But now we are living longer, and we're living into these 30 and 40 and 50 and 60-year marriages, and nobody tells us to renegotiate, to reset the boundaries, to re-romance each other, to get back into that dating persona that we were 30 years ago when we first met. My first marriage broke up after 4 years of dating and 27 years of marriage. So we've been together a very long time. We didn't renegotiate that when we came to being in this menopausal state and I was going through it. I didn't know what was happening. So this is part of the problem of not knowing how menopause is going to affect us. And we talked a lot about the physical changes that we go through, but these emotional changes are really even more life-defining in a way, because we aren't the same person we were when we romanced our partner in the first place. And so now we need to go back and re-court one another. And is it the man's responsibility to know this is coming? Well, no. Be nice. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is because men don't know how we're changing and why we're changing. And all of these pieces that we really need to renegotiate in our lives. And if we don't, then you get the typical, I really have never thought about this way. But one of the reasons that men may go after a younger partner,
I was just about to go there. Yeah, go on.
is not just the biological imperative to reproduce, which is there, but also when he goes after the 22, 23, 26, 30-year-old, he is going back to a woman who is much more compliant. And it's hard to reconcile a lot of what I say with feminism, because I really do believe that we have the rights to make these choices ourselves, and we have the right to be who we want to be. But it's very hard sometimes to overcome the biology that's happening underneath. And for him to go back to a woman who is much more compliant, much more willing to take his needs and put them above her own may be part of why you see all of these men running to younger women. Whereas we as older women are saying, I want my needs met the way I need to have my needs met. So our relationships suffer because of that, because the expectations are different. And we've never bothered to renegotiate because we didn't know we had to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. From a, I hate to admit it, but from the man's perspective, in a way, I never thought I would say this, but in a way, I can see why it seems easier to just start again with someone who hasn't got all of these issues. Because apart from all the emotional stuff and you
Yes.
flipping out at the slightest thing, you've got some ailment every 5 minutes or whatever else is wrong with you. It's just easier.
It's just easier.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Sometimes these conversations come up with these lovely lovely. Okay,
Well,
that's the word.
insights.
Insights that really tell us that, oh, I get why he might just walk away to a relationship that's easier and cleaner. And in that, I mean, my husband's affair was with a woman who was maybe 2 years younger. So it wasn't like she wasn't going to be going through it too really quickly. But the relationship was cleaner. It didn't have all it didn't have the 31-year baggage that our relationship had of, slights that now were coming back up in my mind, or things that I hadn't done coming back up in his mind. So all of that stuff wasn't there. And when I met my current husband, I was actually very lucky, because I met a man who was a lifelong bachelor. He wasn't he had several long-term relationships that broke up, but never really got into this kind of a mess. So now I have this relationship that doesn't have all that baggage, and it's been negotiated as adults, as me being postmenopausal and him being, where he is on his journey. There aren't words for men, because they're journey is a little different. Some people call it andropause, and it is the dropping of testosterone over a period of time. But it's not, it doesn't affect men in the same crash into a wall situation that women seem to come to as their hormones change, because it just seems so much more drastic for us. So yeah.
Okay, so to give people some hope, so it's the drop in the estrogen,
right,
that causes the cortisol to kind of go a
take
little bit
over.
unchecked.
Unchecked is a great word for it.
But does this get to a stage where it balances out, or there's some other part of your endocrine system takes over and you're able to calm down again? Because in a way, no one wants to live with someone who's do you get what I mean?
Actually, you don't want to live that way either. You are more reactive. And when stress builds up, cortisol. So the way cortisol works, cortisol is our long-term stress hormone. And long-term means anything past the lion is chasing you down the path, or the big cat or the mastodon or whatever is chasing you, and you're in fight, flight, survival mode. And when cortisol takes over, it's keeping you on a state of semi-high alert most of the time, and it's very easy to jump up and be in this maximal state of reactivity.
Okay.
So what we need to do is to support our hormones. Now, hormone therapy can do some of it, but I think there is so much else going on that we don't need. There are a lot of reasons, and we could do a whole nother episode on hormone therapy, yes or no. But what we really need to do is use the tools of stress management to bring our base level of cortisol down, and also to teach ourselves ways. And when I say teach ourselves, I teach this. I work with my clients through hypnotherapy and stress management techniques to build a base of, this is what I do when this is the situation that I find myself in. And what I found lately is since I've become added hypnotherapy to my toolkit, that this is an incredible way of helping deal with this particular issue, because it's a matter of learning to live at a lower stress level. And this is modern society. We just don't do that. You know?
Yeah.
As we build businesses, as we take on our passions, as we drive down the street, we have stressful situations. And so it's constantly bringing up our cortisol. So we need to have ways to constantly bring it down. And there's all kinds of reasons to do that beyond that we yell at our husbands. It helps us lose weight. It helps us sleep better. It helps us, heart disease, all kinds of long-term consequences of living at this high stress level that most humans in the first world anyway do throughout our lives. And the other thing that happens is that our range of being able to stay healthy lessens as we have this drop in estrogen as well. So that things that we used to do and get away with, things like, I explain it to Americans, like we're constantly running our kids to soccer games and music lessons and dance lessons and all of that stuff. And so we stop by McDonald's and we go through the drive-through, and mom survives on a few French fries and a couple of chunks of chicken nuggets. And when we're 35, we can stay healthy there. When we're 55, that doesn't work. We can't be healthy in as wide a range of behaviors and supporting our bodies. So supporting our bodies allows us to bring that cortisol down as well.
So there's no going back, so to speak, as in you can't sort of get yourself healthy and get your stress management under control and return to who you were, sort of, like as your energy levels go back up. Could you, not that, well, you probably wouldn't want to once you know what the chicken nuggets and fries are doing, but can you gain back enough energy so that you are more resilient, so that once in a while, if you do that, it's not gonna.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You don't have to, you do not have to live on salads and broiled fish for the rest of your life. You can, you can. I don't recommend Louisiana eating because we are on holiday period from Halloween till Mardi Gras, and that's like 4.5, 5 months. It's way too long. But you want to take Christmas week and just enjoy the foods that you've enjoyed all your life and just sit in front of the fire with a cup of eggnog? Yeah, you can do that. You might have to realize that that's going to take its toll a little bit, and you're going to have to do that post New Year's, put myself back into
Cleanse kind of thing.
and that's true. But it's when you learn to support your body, yes, you do have more resilience. You do have a wider range of behaviors that you can indulge in. But when you go over the line, you'll find what happened to me the other night. And that's a result of it being the end of Mardi Gras season, the end of, I've been very busy with clients and work right in this early part of the year. And just a lot of things have been coming down, and I haven't been eating well. I've made I've made choices that don't support my body. And I can see right now what's the result of that. And the result of that is that I am not as resilient. I don't have as far to go before anger or anxiety. Anxiety isn't my thing for the most part, but anger is. Anger comes in. And yeah, you can see it. And so it's a matter of finding what works for you. And that's what I do with my clients is find the sweet spot for them. What's bringing their anxiety, anxiety down, anger down, helping them understand how that communication has changed with their loved ones. And by the way, this isn't just about spouses. This is also about children and parents, because and best friends. All of those relationships are being renegotiated. And for the most part, they're being renegotiated behind the scenes. Nobody really sits down and says, oh, wait, things have changed. Let's renegotiate who's doing what, how we're relating to one another, and what happens when mom goes off the deep end. Sometimes if you read, I'm an addicted reader, so I read everything that comes across my vision, really. And you'll read books about young people who said, and then I was 16 and my mom went crazy. And nobody is saying to the kids, hey, mom's changing and she wants to renegotiate your relationships too. And this can be a good thing for kids, because if you renegotiate that relationship in the right way, kids get a lot more freedom. They get a lot more responsibility. They get to learn who they are at a different level than when mom was a helicopter mom. And it's going to actually happen earlier as our birth, as women delay having children longer. My granddaughter is 3. Her mom is in her early 40s. This is going to happen real soon for her. Yeah. And it so happens that my son has a very level head. So it's going to work out better for them than for some. But here we have 5-year-olds with moms going through menopause, and mom doesn't have the capacity for shenanigans. I've been involved with a running team where we've named ourselves shenanigans. So the word is in my brain. But mom doesn't have enough space in her life for that kind of free-for-all that maybe a 25-year-old mom would have with a 5-year-old. And so that relationship is at risk too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if we understand what we're going through, then we don't go to the doctor's office and say, hey, I can't control my temper anymore. And he says, here's a bottle of Ambien, or that's Ambien sleep. Here's a bottle of Prozac. And now mom's hooked on downers because she thinks it's her fault. And it's not. It's her biology that's causing the problem. And then dad says, I can't have this. The children are at risk. So he's like, we're getting divorced and I'm suing for custody because you're on those drugs. And if we just understand what's happening to us, we can take the steps that we need to take to make all these relationships work.
So I think the most dangerous, I guess, part of it would be at the beginning of perimenopause, when you don't actually really know what's going on. You're just angry, or you're just fed up with him doing, and you probably actually got valid reason, because you are genuinely fed up with whatever's been going on for however long. So, and up until recently,
we still don't talk about this part. We still don't.
Yeah.
We
barely talk about, well,
I forget how much I talk about it, in terms of I'm in these conversations every day where I'm talking either to a podcaster or I'm talking to a podcast guest, talking to my clients. I have these conversations all the time, but our doctors don't. I don't know about the UK, but our doctors here are on extremely tight leashes from the insurance companies. So they have very little time to talk with us.
Yeah, same here.
And so and their training says our GP, our primary cares, I'm old enough that I remember general practitioners, GPs, but our primary care and our gynecologists are taught about the physical stuff. They're taught about looking for breast cancer. They're talking about uterine abnormalities and vaginal atrophy and periods disappearing and hot flashes. But they don't tie into the mental stuff, the emotional stuff, these changes. And they don't necessarily tie into the insulin resistance being a part of this, or the thyroid changes. Nobody is getting all this information except possibly the functional medicine doctors and the very few gynecologists who specialize in menopause. There's maybe 500 of those in the United States. And I don't know about the UK, but there's maybe 500 specialists in gynecology, in menopause, in gynecology. Whoa, how many women need them? And not only do they need them, or they need this information, even with that same doctor doesn't have 2, 4, 6, 10 hours to spend with a woman explaining all of this stuff. Big reason I wrote the book, the first book, I Just Want to Be Me Again, which is sort of the companion piece to Where Is My Wife? It's a little more detailed. It's a little more, this is what's happening to you. This is what you can do. Whereas Where Is My Wife is basically, this is what's happening to the woman in your life, your mother, your daughter, your spouse, whoever that woman is. She is changing, and this is the kinds of things you might see. And oh, by the way, if you want to continue this relationship, this is how we renegotiate this. This is how we recourt one another. So I wrote the book. I do my coaching around it, because we don't, even with all that has gone on in the last few years, the information is still at mostly the physical level. So I go digging into this stuff from my point of view, and all of a sudden you see a line that says, this seems to be related to the amount of estrogen a woman has in her body, or this seems to happen at the age of 45 and beyond. And you start saying, well, what's happening? And the information is starting to become available, but they still don't research it in the same way that we need it researched, so that we can really dig into, this is the change that's going to happen, and this is what it means, and this is what you can do about it. So the way I work is very much experimental. When I get a woman in who's dealing with anger, we start by trying to reduce that stress, and then we start to work to rebalance her hormones, so she's got that broader range of response available to her. But it's not always, there's even taking the pill, taking the hormone replacement, even doing that is not necessarily going to bring you back to where you were. And that's okay, because where we are now is really a gift to us. It's the gift of being able to concentrate on who we are and put ourselves into the middle circle of our lives. Now, when I say that, I don't mean you have to kick somebody out to, the cool thing about the middle circle is it's infinitely expandable. You can put your kids, you can put your grandkids, you can put your nieces and nephews, your husband, your ex-husband, you can put anything in there. But for years, we've been on the outskirts of our lives. And this hormone retreat from the central part of our being allows us to put ourselves in the middle. And then we get to decide what our priorities are. And that's a gift, really is.